Will you pray with me? Almighty God, we come to you this morning needing peace in our lives, seeking peace in our world. As we come to you to hear your words, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So as we said at the beginning of the service, this is the 200th anniversary of the writing of that great song, Silent Night. Little history, just before Christmas in 1818 in St. Nicholas's Chapel in Oberndorfer by Salzburg, Austria. It was discovered in this little church that the leather bellows on the organ were damaged. Probably a mouse had chewed a hole in these leather bellows. Now, unlike our digital pipe organ, those pipe organs would not work without the source of air coming through the bellows. And because of the remote location of the church and the snow, there was no repairman that could get to the church in time for Christmas Eve to get that organ working again. And you can't have Christmas in Austria without music. So the organist, Franz Gruber, worked with the priest, Joseph Moore, to write a simple Christmas carol that could be sung with a guitar. From that came this memorable words and melody, Silent Night, Holy Night. It's been translated into more than 140 languages. And when we finish doing the work, setting up the lobby over in the Ministry Center, you'll see some of those languages of Silent Night on the bulletin board. Be sure to check that out and see what they look like. Well, as we mentioned again at the beginning of the service, in World War I, almost 100 years later, just 4 years shy of its 100th anniversary, war broke out in Europe. You know that story. It's ironic, isn't it, that just a month ago we remembered the 100th anniversary of the Great War, and this December we're celebrating the 200th anniversary of the creation of Silent Night. The Great War, wasn't expected to last long. Most figured that the troops would be home by Christmas. But as we know, that horrible, terrible war lasted 4 years, taking millions of lives, causing great destruction and misery. But on the first Christmas day of that war, in 1914, the troops on either side were taking a breather, as Larry mentioned. Someone on the German side started singing Stille Nacht, and soon his comrades joined him. And shortly after that, the English voices heard it coming across no man's land, and they started singing Silent Night, Holy Night in English. And soldiers started to walk out of their trenches into no man's land in the middle, and this unofficial truce was there. And they were able to police no man's land and take out the bodies of their comrades who had been killed in the fighting the days before, taking them home for proper burial. And soldiers from each side exchanged small gifts like cigars and socks. And a game of footy took place between the Germans and the English, with no intention of keeping score and seeing who wins. And those of us who aren't English, footy is soccer. And at the end of the day, they shook hands, said Merry Christmas, and returned to their own entrenchments. And the next morning, the battle resumed, a day of peace in the midst of terrible destruction. Sleep and heavenly peace were the words of that song. Zebulun and Naphtali were the two tribes of Israel had been under pretty constant oppression. The prophecy of Isaiah is that all nations will come together in the name of the Lord. Listen again to these words. In those days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. In other words, the Lord God will be the sovereign over all the rulers of all the nations, not just Zebulun and Naphtali, or the rest of the tribes of Israel, but all nations surrounding them. And the Lord will be the ultimate judge between the peoples of the earth. There will indeed, the promises of Isaiah says, be peace on earth. And a little while later, this is reinforced when the prophet says, the people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. The darkness of warfare and fear will be replaced by the light of the one who is to come. The prophet tells us that this will not be accomplished by a great warrior, but by a simple little child. He says, "For unto you a child has been born. This child's name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. And he will outrule all the petty tyrants of the nations of the world that are at war with one another when peace comes." Prince of Peace. In earlier chapters, the prophet tells us that when this Prince of Peace comes, nations will stop their warring. They will beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. In other words, weapons of war will become instruments of justice, bringing food and peace to all the hungry and those in need. Truce will fall into the world like it did on that first Christmas in the trenches of World War I. I looked up the word truce, and I found that it comes from the root word faith, faithfulness, assurance of faith, covenant, truth, fidelity, and promise. When the Prince of Peace comes, when the Prince of Peace finally comes, there will be a permanent truce, permanent faithfulness, covenant, promise, a truce rooted in faith. Right now, in our communities, our churches, and our world, we're torn up by many issues of cultural condition. Families fight. Any of you have to deal with family fights over your Thanksgiving meal? Politicians argue. Flame wars on the internet spread ignorance and hate. And sometimes, right, we feel that hope, peace, love, and light are missing from our lives. Perhaps this Christmas can be a time of ceasefire from our own inner sources of conflict. Not long ago, Northern Ireland was torn apart by violence and hatred between the Protestants and the Catholics. They called it the Troubles. Cities were divided, families were divided, bombings occurred frequently on the cities and the streets of Northern Ireland. Yet in the midst of that violence, there were those on both sides who sought to come together. And there was a house built right on the border between the Protestants and the Catholics in Dublin. It was called the Peace House, where children and youth could come together and talk about peace. One of those who was involved in that was named Gareth Higgins, and he wrote, "There are lots of ways to prevent violence, lots of ways to repair its consequences, lots of ways to build a beloved community. In a polarized society, there may be no more effective violence prevention measure than building bridges, or at least none more accessible. Get to know at least one person who votes differently. It's not necessarily easy, but it's necessary. And the history of conflict transformation proves it works. Start with a person of different political views with whom you feel most comfortable. Just get to know each other. This is the work," he says. Each week in this season of preparation during Advent, we light another candle on our wreath. Hopefully, you will at home as well. Say, have a meal together. Have a meal this morning. Make a Advent wreath to take home with you. And I will have Advent guides based on what we're doing on Sundays for you to take home with you. We're symbolically, when we light the candles on the wreath, bringing light into a dark world, as Christ brought a great light to all the people. Let us be the light for all those around us. Let us live in peace and demonstrate what it means to care for one another, even with those sometimes insurmountable differences. We need a silent night. The choir beautifully sing those words. We're going to echo them. The chorus is the response throughout the season of Advent. Listen to the words again. We need a silent night here. We need your presence to come near. Give us the hope we need and the peace we seek. We need a silent night in here. So let's work towards that peace in all that we do and all that we say. Will you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, thank you for the gift of Jesus Christ. Help us to beat our swords into plowshares and our pruning hooks into plows. Help us to live lives of peace with one another within our families, with our friends, and with those with whom we have differences. We pray for peace in our world. The leaders of the world will find a way to find peace with one another, who will no longer be caught up in warfare. We offer these things to you in the name of Jesus Christ, who is the light of the